So we're doing the external assessment, and these are the topics we're going to look at: the resource-based view versus IO. We touched on the external forces. You don't need to go over that one again. We looked at Porter's 5 forces model. We just go through that briefly. But today, largely, we're going to focus on these two tools, which I gather will be new to most students, other than you are repeating the course. And did we talk about the IO and RBV last week? So for those who read ahead, you know what it is. So my friend here, what's the IO? Industrial Organization Approach. My friend here, what's your name? Huh? Yes, sir. What's the industrial organization approach for those who read ahead? And everybody should have. I sent about 2 emails on that. My friend right up front. Anybody? Industrial organization approach means it's all about. So Quinn, nobody read ahead? So y'all don't believe me? Quinn? You like you're a Trump. You like you were saying I'm promoting fake news. Quinn? Ayo? Lady right there. Hello. That's looking at me, yeah? Ayo? On the IFE? Right. So I will answer 2 questions on that shortly then. So the industrial organization approach says that the external forces are much more critical than the internal in developing your strategies and plans and products. That's what the IO is. It is that the external forces are more critical than the internal when you're developing your strategies and your strategic plans and your policies and practices. And Michael Porter et al. Will be those who subscribe and promote the industrial organizational approach to strategy. We call them the externalists. Then you have now the resource-based view, which is basically an opposite, which says, no, you're wrong, buddy. It's the internal resources that are more critical for you to develop strategy. So you start from within and then you look outside for all of these other forces, the competitive and the political and all of the other external things. So the emphasis then, which you think would be the most critical resource in the RBV if it says the internal resources are more important? My friend here, what's your name? Yes? Neither. So if we argue the internal resources are more critical to developing strategy and then you look outside, which resource do you think is most critical then? Who said humans? Why? Speak louder, everybody can hear you. I want to borrow my mic.
Because the human resource is the most important to carry out the mission.
So you better believe it, folks. The human resource for me is the most important. You heard I said for me, because there are other people, other lecturers might argue, financial resource, capital. If you don't have capital, workers can't do anything. But I believe people are the most important thing in human existence on earth. So there's nothing that is more critical than human beings. Right? Not saying that profits are not important or financial gain, but as she said, you could have all the beautiful plans and strategies and you could have millions of dollars invested in your business. But if when you try to implement, workers are dissatisfied and they don't think they're treated well, your organization has problems. So the internal resource must be treated special, and that's what the RBV pays attention to, the ways in which you treat the people who work within the organization. So let's look at the university then, right in the back, the guy in the hoodie. Let's hide him from me. What's your name? Sorry? Shem? So let's look at the University of the West Indies. What's the customer service relationships here? Or are there customer service relationships? Tell us about it. University of the West Indies, where you are. Sorry? You were late. We're going to that hard. In the university, tell us about the customer service relationships. About the human resources, yes. Want me to come back, the lady next to you. What's your name? In the yellow or greenish, I don't know. Yes? What's your name? Sorry? Whitney? Yes. Tell us about the customer relationships in the university. So you're saying the students are the external customers and the internal customers will be staff. How many people you think believe that? So in the school, who is the customer? Students? How many people you think believe that? You think in the university you're treated as a customer? Or student interrupting busy people? That's a serious thing, you know, folks. You know? Are you seen as important customers or students who interrupt busy staff, admin staff, or academics like me? Do you think, which one is it? You think people see you as an interruption in their busy work? Do you get excellent customers? Do people treat you special? No. Do you think they go beyond the call to please you? And that's one of the paradoxes of education. Well, I made you a promise up front. I said to you, you're my customers. Without you, I don't have a job. So I try hard to make you feel that you're my customers. The only difference is when it comes now to December, there's a paradox there. Amy, you know the paradox in December? Huh? What's the paradox in December, Amy? Right, so what's the paradox about the exams in December? You're my customers. I put you all under pressure. But the paradox is, folks, in December, I now have power over my customers, that I give you an exam and I say to you, you know, sit this exam and do well in the exam. But even then, it's a customer service relationship, because I can set a paper that is so unreasonable and so hard that it's very difficult for most students to get in there. But you know that is not so, because from the statistics I showed you, I set easy exams. Correct? You were here last week? Who was here last week? You were here last week. So you know from the statistics, I set easy exams. But the statistics are there to see 3 years. You cannot have, and folks, it's a simple premise. If an exam is hard, it means that the average student will not get an A. But anytime you have an exam where students can get A's and A minuses and A pluses and B pluses, it means it can be a hard exam. But that's logic, you understand? But if it was difficult, even the brightest students will have a challenge in getting, or the students who work well, not brightest, but the students who work steadily hard will not be able to do well. But these are two critical concepts, folks, that you need to pay attention to. So 3 phases we touched on. The 5 elements of the 5 forces are things you need to know. The issue of bargaining power we touched on. And everybody here should know the difference between a vision and a mission. So somebody who hasn't spoken is going to tell me now. Difference between, lady here, what's the difference between a vision and a mission? Made in the green dot, yes? Yes. Right. So what influences the formation of a vision? What influences the formation of a vision? Yes. What's her name? The, yes, Shakina. The objectives influence the vision. You sure? Right, but what influences that vision then? What makes the university determine this is where we want to be in the next 15, 20 years? What influences that? Sorry? But that's what I'm saying. What helps them to determine the things that they should achieve? Go ahead. So the question is, what determines the end goal? Anybody else wants to try? What determines the vision? What influences this vision? You're close. Sorry? So when you say the societal standard, why do businesses exist? You sure? To make a profit? To create job opportunities? Anybody else? The lady in the back is the brown bag. What's your name? Right here, yes. That's looking back. Yes. Sorry? You agree with what they're saying? They say to make a profit, create job opportunities, to make transactions easier. Sorry? Of whom? You are close. Folks, the bottom line is any organization, any business is created to serve people. And in serving people, you make a profit. You create employment. You create economic growth that can then benefit the same people. You understand? Because the only way you're going to be able to create profit is by what? How would you create profits? Yes.
By offering the goods.
Right, so you have to offer goods and services. How do you determine the goods and services to offer?
Again,
Based on the needs of the, and how will you determine the needs of the customers? Which is what we're doing now. Folks, you understand what we're saying here? Here is the organization that is responding to pressures. So here, customers would have needs. Our government would determine we need some services provided. But customers make demands, whether directly or indirectly. You understand? So you realize that people were complaining they need housing. And you set up a company to build houses. People were complaining they need more education. People set up schools, they are private schools, they are public schools. So for any business that is set up, as your colleague said, forgot your name. Huh? Right, as Kedona said, there has to be a need. Because let's look at it logically, Quinn. If there is no need, and you set up your business, Quinn, what is going to happen? Quinn, there's no need, but Quinn father is rich. That's what I understand. Few million, and he, like Trump, he said, Quinn, when you leave university, I want you to be successful. Here's $1 million. So Quinn gets $1 million, and he sets up a business. But Quinn, if there's no need, what's the problem you have? Huh? No customers. Now I'm here, create a need. But you know the challenge with that, he's still taking a chance. Why is he taking a chance to try to create the need? So brilliant guy here. In order for you to create a need, you need to convince people you need this. But some people actually do that, you know. Powerful companies create a need and they then try to sell it to you. You already need this. But if you're not able to convince people that they need something, right? Like Apple now here, they got the QR with XR or the 10R, right? Now coming out 1,000 and something US, so we'll sell here about 3,000. So they're going to spend the next set of years telling people you need this iPhone. You know they're going to catch a lot of people too. But why do you think Apple would be able then to convince people they need it? Why would Apple in marketing? People should know this. The guy in the black shirt. What Apple has that would allow it to get customers to come for this new thing? Status? That could be part of it. But what Apple has that allows them to be able to create this need, this iPhone product? But we already passed market research. Apple already exists. It's successful. You know that Apple is more wealthy than most countries in the world? You all knew that? Apple is more wealthy than most countries. The GDP of most countries in the world, 1 trillion. But it's close to that. So what Apple has that allows it to be able to influence people and convince them? Excellent. You all can get some good A pluses, I can tell. I can tell. At least the ones that are talking. I don't know about them. Folks, brand loyalty and brand recognition. So let's come home. Flow, Digicel, Ozone. Now all you talk about flow. I know people who had flow numbers for the last 15 years. And they have no intention of changing, but it was cable and wireless at that time. They have no intention of changing. You know what they tell me? I know they're not good in all ways, but I love flow. You understand? It's this commitment. They just love flow. Right? So you remember the years when flow was a monopoly? Who had the bargaining power? So we had some of the highest rates. I don't know if you all can remember. Digicel will form this week. You know what happened the next week? The rates dropped by 20 and 30%. So folks, we are talking about 5 forces here. Because by a competitor coming in, what did it do? But don't talk about the prices yet, we're talking strategy. A new competitor came in the market, what happened? They got new auctions because there is an additional competitor and people then had choices. And because people had choices, the bargaining power of flow, the cable and wireless at that time was reduced. And because the bargaining power was reduced, they were forced to reduce their rate. So I'm showing you how in real life, what we're talking about here is move it off the book. And that's how you go in the exam and you do well. You take the theory and apply it in practice. So from next week, I bet you most of you will forget that. And that's a simple classic case of using the 5 forces model. So we've taken the 5 forces off the textbook and put it in real life. You understand what we're saying here, folks? So folks, this is how I teach this class, right? 2 purposes. Real life, that you can set up a business and use some of the skills from this class, and also to pass the exam. But the exam is secondary to you gaining knowledge and understanding. But everybody with me here? This marketing, brand loyalty. And when there's brand loyalty, folks, because you trust, and trust is the important thing in brand loyalty. So because you trust your supplier, they can convince you. But they know what you like, and they can convince you to buy something that they see you had a pattern of buying. So what allows companies today, folks, to be able to gather information, to know how to target your taste? Social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all of those. So they know how to profile you, and then what he said it can happen then. They know what he likes and doesn't like, so they can target him and convince him, you really need this. Based on what you are saying, you really need this. Because they have your data. But that's if you give them accurate information. You know what I'm saying? So let me give you an example. Last December, a whole set of my friends called me and said, I didn't know you had happy birthday. Right? Last December, a lot of my friends called me and said, happy birthday. I have Facebook, but I don't use it a lot. And I said, well, sorry, but it wasn't my birthday. I just got in the wrong dates. So when I sign into these things, I never give them my correct birthday, unless I'm buying something legally. But for these social media things, I put in the wrong birth dates and all kinds of things. So people are always wishing me happy birthday the wrong time. Because you know what these things, social media will pop up and say, happy birthday. But I know a lot of you give them all of your personal data. So you can find how they can start then to help to influence you because they understand what your tastes are. So in an indirect way, they actually cater to your needs. Because I hope you all understand what is happening. Whenever you go on the web and you start to search, they actually create a profile for each of you. So from that, right, all of the special statistical functions that they have will be able to determine for each person what their preferences might be for clothes, for food, for travel. So when you book a flight online, there's a history, right, of the airlines you might prefer, the type of rates you prefer, places you prefer. And I think that's the big debate. And I'm challenging you to tune into the international discussion because there's a big international debate now whether or not it is violating people's freedom and rights for companies to be creating databases on you without getting your permission. So they have massive databases on each of you without your permission, and they're actually selling it to other people. Okay? So it's really a big, big debate in the international business area all that now. So I suggest you can read up on it. So what we are focusing on now, folks, remember we talked about the SWOT. So everybody's comfortable here? Is anything we've done so far you don't understand? Now, folks, I hope you realize that a lot of what we're talking about goes back to this very simple model that you did in first year management. Customer influences, the role of the organization, responding to government issues, responding to technology. So this model is going to be a model that's going to utilize the law. The competitive forces that we have in the middle are also going to be critical. If there's anything I say that you're not clear about, feel free to put it in your hand and say, Gentleman, I'm not sure about that, could you go over? And I will. Now you realize the external assessment deals with the opportunities and threats from your SWOT analysis. And below then, the OT are the external factors and the SW, the internal. Now, when you are doing your cases, and I'm going forward a bit, you have to analyze the environment of the company in the cases. You have to determine the external forces and the internal forces, and then you need to separate what the opportunities and threats are and the strengths and weaknesses. And the problem a number of students have, they get opportunities and threats mixed up with strengths and weaknesses. It seems simple, So folks, if you get this wrong, when you start to develop your EFE and CPM and IFE, they're going to be flawed. And for your cases, you have to prepare these tools. You have to prepare a pestle analysis, SWOT analysis, external factor evaluation matrices, internal matrices, and these competitive profile matrices. But the point I'm making, folks, this analysis you will have to do first for your companies and your cases through the pestle analysis. Everybody with me? And when you do the pestle, you can then determine which factors would be, right, the pestle and the internal analysis. You will then be able to determine the opportunities and threats and strengths and weaknesses. And that is from doing this overall environmental assessment. So I want to reiterate the point, folks, that if you get it wrong here, and your SWOT is flawed where you get a threat mixed up with a weakness, or you get an opportunity mixed up with a strength, it is going to go right into your EFE that we will do shortly. And once it goes into your EFE, you come right down. So once it comes into your EFE, it's going to impact on the various factors you are analyzing. And your analysis then will be flawed. And it goes right through your case. Right? So that's why I'm spending so much time on this model of the simple model of the environmental business. Now, I hope you read ahead because for the next 2 to 3 weeks, there are a whole set of new tools I'm going to introduce you to. Now, these are tools that you do not memorize because for the cases you have to present in class and in the exam, you get similar cases, many cases. You need to know how to analyze the matrices, interpret what they're saying, and then make some kind of recommendations. But first, you need to understand how these matrices are structured and the reason why these matrices have been created by the author David. So we'll spend this week and next week going through the elements to understand, not to apply, right? How to understand them. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks down, we will then apply them where I come in class and I give you a sample of an IFE or CPM, and in class we do a comprehensive analysis, interpretation of statistics there. So in the matrix, in the EFE matrix, you would have weights, you have ratings, you have weighted scores, and total weighted scores. So I hope you would have read ahead. If you did not read ahead and you're seeing it for the first time, you're going to be generally lost and you leave here wondering, what should I do? The students who read ahead and have a basic understanding of the structure of the EFE and CPM, not that you know it perfectly, when you leave here today, you're going to leave feeling, yes, I think I understand this generally, and then in tutorials, we'll get to clarify it for you a little more deeply. Now, the other thing about the EFE are the responses. So there are going to be 3 key matrices that look at the internal and the external. Right? So you will have the EFE, the external factor evaluation matrix, the CPM, the competitive profile matrix, and the IFE, the internal factor evaluation matrix. The ratings vary according to the matrix. And again, the challenge that students have if they try to learn by rote, they get the ratings mixed up, which means the analysis of the statistics and results will also be skewed. So in the EFE's case, there are 4 basic ratings that you can have. 4, which is a superior response. 3, which is an above average response. 2, an average response. And 1, a poor response. So my question now to the guy right in the back here, why for the external factor evaluation matrix, we call it responses. What's your name? Yes, Shaquem. Why do we call it responses? Sorry? My friend here, what's your name? Ian? Why do you think we call it responses? It's an external factor evaluation matrix. Excellent. Good response. I thought I had your trick there. Give him a hand. I thought I had your trick. But that's it, folks. Remember, we said we are building a house, right? So you will find for all of these matrices, you've got to go back to that environmental business. So the key thing here is the direction of influence. Right? Now, I didn't just put these arrows here because I like to draw, and y'all realize I'm a brilliant artist. Why did I put the arrows in that direction? It's not a lane in my problem. Right, because the principle of the environmental business is the external, is that these are forces generally beyond the control of the individual organization or sector. And these forces are constantly putting pressure on a business. So economic forces, they can put negative pressure or positive pressure. Because a lot of money could overheat the economy, not enough money either. So economic factors could directly influence a business. Social and cultural factors. Right? Somebody give me an example how a social and cultural factor could impact on a business. Yes? Right. So she's saying that in India, beef is a no-no because it's sacred. So because of that, it tells businesses, yeah, you like your Burger King, you like beef, but come to India and set up a Burger King. What do you think will happen in real life? You better believe it. They will either burn you down or attack you because it's really a kind of a sacrilege. You're attacking my religion. So nobody goes to India and consider even mentioning beef as a food. You know, you might die. There's a fanatic that will seek you out. Technology is constantly influencing, positive and negative. Environmental changes, both physical environment and otherwise. Cultural factors changing. How can a shift in culture? You say maybe an example. How can a shift in culture then impact on a business, positively or negatively? Excellent. Excellent. Give her a hand. Excellent. Right. So these are the little cultural, and then if you realize even in Africa, there's a battle for Islam, Christianity, Muslims. So if the Muslims start to come, generally Islam is in the north, in Africa, north, Christians in the south. So if you find Islam now starts to take over territories that were once Christian, you're actually going to see it in the businesses, but they're going to have to shift the kind of services and the food. That's a really brilliant example. Conversely, if the Christians the missionaries start to convince people Christianity is better than Islam, as the Christian movement spreads more in the country, that cultural shift is actually going to impact on businesses. Sorry? As he said, positivity depends on your perspective. If you're Islam, you're not going to say it. If you're Islam, if you're a Muslim, you're not going to say it as positive. If you're a Christian, you're going to say it as positive. But it depends. But he's saying the business owners can see they can sell more stuff, but that also depends on what? It depends on what? Yes, sir. No. His thing about the business owners, we see it as opportunity, but that also depends. What does it depend on? Huh? Resources? No. He made one big assumption about the businesses. Remember, we were talking about a cultural shift. You are making the assumption that all of the business are homogenous, or the business are not caught up in religion, but you could have business persons who also have their religious beliefs. So for the ones who support Islam, they're not seeing it as an opportunity if it's a Christian movement, but the Christians will see it as an opportunity. So this, the point I'm making here, depending on the cases, that kind of in-depth analysis is something that you will need to be able to engage in, right? And the best way to do it, folks, you see what we did just now? That is the kind of interaction you need to have in your groups. Getting into groups and discussing different scenarios utilizing these various models. So the critical thing we are saying, a response, because the environment is pushing on businesses. And as Ian said, the external environment is pushing, so you are responding to whether it is a positive push or negative push. So even in terms of economics, it could be positive. Interest rates have reduced. So if interest rates are reduced, my friend in Nike, if the interest rates are reduced, what's the impact on the business? Sorry? They get more sales. Eventually. So if interest rates are reduced, so of course one thing about this course, try to follow the sequential steps. Don't jump. Right? So if interest rates are reduced, what seems to be one of the first logical steps? Sorry? Borrow what? Right. If you wanted to do a new product, so you can consider then borrowing, or do you have to borrow first? Because if interest rates are reduced, what does it mean? I have excess cash to deal with. Especially if the interest rates might relate to loans or things like that. So if I have access to more cash, I might not need to get a loan. So what I do then, I might use the additional cash I have to provide what? Better goods and services to my customers. So I might be able to offer them a better price. So it's as a result of offering a better price that people might then start to buy. You see the different steps, folks? You understand what I'm saying, Quinn? So in the course, it requires a logical series of steps, right? Interest rates drop don't mean necessarily people will buy more, because the company first has to make a decision. Am I going to pass on the benefits to customers? They don't have to, right? The banks might get special interest rate benefits. The banks might not necessarily pass it on to you. But so the first thing is, with a reduction in the interest rates, a decision will have to be made to pass on the benefits to customers. And as a result of better prices, customers are then able to purchase more. And then when they purchase more, does it mean increased profits? My friend here, what's your name? So because of increased revenues, increased sales, does it mean increased profits? Why not? Because you now have to manage your costs. And next week, we're looking at value chain analysis. So I'm saying to you up front, folks, value chain analysis permeates nearly every aspect of this course. So I'm suggesting to you, in time for next week's class, start reading now on value chain analysis. For some students, it's a challenge to understand it at first, but value chain analysis is going to be linking back to almost everything. When I mean linking, it's going to be linking to everything, and you will be tested on it in the exam. Right? It's one of those topics that is all-encompassing. You need to know these ratings very well. Right? Know and understand the ratings. So let's look at the EFE. So you have opportunities, right? 7 or so opportunities. And then you have your threats, right? You have your opportunities, you have your threats, you have, and that's the first column, you have your weight, you have your rating, and you have your weighted score. And you would see here, we have our total weighted score. So, my question to you then, right, we know the ratings. So a 4 is a superior response, 3 above average, 2 average, and 1 poor. So we know the ratings. Why do I need to put in weights? Somebody who hasn't spoken so far this morning. Why do I need to put in weights? My friend here, yes sir. Second hoodie guy, yes buddy. Why do I need to put weights in this matrix? Sorry? Excellent. What's your name? Dan Raj. Excellent. Give him a hand. Excellent. You're a good group, you know. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. So the question is, how many other people in here knew it was important? Put your hand up, let me see. That's excellent. Why importance?
I would say because each of them are rated differently from each other. So for example, you have high capital investment. High capital investment would be more important to a team rather than lower labor costs in overseas marketing.
Excellent. So why is that important to know that information in making a decision? Especially when I'm rating. What does the weight do in a matrix like this? What does the weight do? Is Devon, what's your name? What's your name again? Kedona, yes, Kedona. Why is the weight important in a matrix like this?
It lets you want to know where the emphasis should be taken in the strategy formulation.
Wow. Give my hand. Wow. You know where the emphasis should be in strategy formulation. That's brilliant. Wow. Folks, I'm not just telling you that. I mean, I like to read classes from earlier. You know, these are excellent. For people who are in second week, these are exceptional responses. You see? You need to find, in other words, you have 7 items. All are not equal. So if you treat all as equal without the weight, you know it's going to skew your results. Without the weight, folks, raw numbers. So a weight of, suppose this was 4 with a weight of 5, right, versus 4 with a weight of 8. You see, both 4, but which way the score is going to be higher? Yeah. But if I take up the weight, it's assuming they're both equal. So when you're making decisions, you're going to put emphasis on the wrong areas. So you're paying attention to technology. And technology is weighted 0.01. There's no problem in technology. Yeah, there's some little issues, down right? But you're spending all of this time and money to focus on technology, and you're emphasizing the wrong thing in your planning. And that's how you put it in the strategy formulation stage. If you lose anybody, if you look at loss, I see some eyes, I can tell my eyes are lost. So if you want me to go over, put your hands up and we will go over. So anybody wants me to go back over? This is important. This stage is important. Don't feel ashamed to put your hands up. It's okay to not understand. Anybody wants me to go over? You all comfortable? Going red. You're comfortable? Okay. So we know, folks, that when it comes to weights, they determine importance. And secondly, they help you to determine where you should put the emphasis when you get to planning. Everybody with me? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
I want to get your feedback, folks. I ain't talking at you. This is an interactive discussion. So you do not want skewed results because it would impact on your sound and wise and proper decision making. Now, a similar thing here. For threats, you have your weights that are different. So the higher weight for threats assumes it is more important, which means your emphasis should be on. First, the uncertainty among consumers and travelers due to the weak economy. That's where I put my emphasis in my threats. And the second one then will be my emphasis should be on. Second area of emphasis. Sorry? The weak economy, number one, causing a drop in consumer disposable income. Because that is 0.07. So in analyzing an EFE or CPM or IFE matrix, the first thing you do, you look for the opportunities, you look for the highest weights, especially under exam conditions, because we give you some of these in the exam that you have to analyze. So you can determine here, I have 1, 2, 3 items that are 0.08, hence those are the 3 most critical. So for purposes, even for the exam and my analysis, I am going to put an emphasis on these 3 areas. High capital investment, causing entry barriers to be difficult. So folks, what I want you to pay attention to as you look at these tools, remember I said we are building a foundation. So straight away, if you look at number 3, what foundation concept is this linked to? Which foundation concept or model does this link to? Sorry? Porter's 5 forces model. So if you don't understand Porter's 5 forces model here, when you read this, you wonder what they're talking about. Yeah, it's causing entry barriers to be difficult, but you need to understand the whole concept of barriers to entry. But if you don't understand the concept of barriers to entry, as Porter states, you will be reading numbers and not really understanding how now to apply it in the context in which we do it. If you look at number 4, you see again, substitution is limited in some businesses. Again, the 5 forces model. And you can see the factors coming up. Technology, labor market. Which one is this? Evaluation. Factor is economic factor. So the same thing for your threats. You look for the highest, which you put your emphasis on in terms of the exam. Now there's one other thing about the weights. They must total 1. They must total 1. So when you are developing your EFE, for the case that you will present in class for marks, you have to design it from the beginning. You have to determine the opportunities and threats. You need to determine the weights. So from reading the case, you might not have 7. I normally tell students between 3 to 5 maximum. In reading the case I will give you, you have to determine which of these external factors, the threats, are more important than others. So you determine the weights. And as I tell students, the best way to do it is to do a simple ranking. When you look at your threats, if you have 5, rank from 1 to 5. Which do we think is number 1? Which is number 2, 3, 4, 5? And based on that, you can then allocate the weight. And a similar thing for opportunities, you do a ranking first. In your group, which you think is number one in terms of importance and for emphasis, and you rank from 1 to 5, and then you can go into allocates, and the numbers will shift. So because this is 7, you would have the 0.08, but once, if you use about 3 or 4, you might find weights like 0.10, 0.20, 0.25. Right? You might determine one thing is worth 0.30, and then the others could be broken down into finer ratios. But it's for your group to determine the extent of importance. If you think something is extremely important, you can give it a weight of 0.05. But remember, it's for the total matrix that it must add up to 1. And you might just need to do some different combinations, right, and adjust your numbers in the ranking to make sure it eventually comes to 1. And in the analysis, you pay attention to the ratings. So this tells you what? When you look at the ratings for the threats, what does it tell you? The ratings for the threats, what does it tell you? Yes, madam.
I think it tells us how effectively the organization is responding to the external factors and all the.
Right, so when you look at this one, you're analyzing now, what do these numbers, the ratings, tell you? When you look at the ratings for these 10 threats, what do they tell you? Sorry? Sorry, what are you saying? Well, this is based on the environment. So I'm saying when you're looking at the ratings, so I'm saying what would be your conclusions from the ratings that are given here? But no, but you're making it generic. I want you to analyze these numbers and tell me what these numbers are telling you. Sorry? Sorry? But you're still generic. You see, folks? You're still, sorry? Why?
Because they have higher
But hold on, no, he's saying that you put emphasis on 1 and 5 because they are the higher ratings. Any other response? You agree? Sorry? But you're still being general. Right in the back. All right, so let me ask you a question. Right? You are a student. You are excellent in math. You get A's and B pluses in math. And you get C minuses in strategy. Which one you would pay more attention to? So in what you're saying here, the higher rating, you give more attention. So the higher rating suggests what? You are responding well. So remember, folks, we are doing an analysis for the purposes of developing strategy. So folks, the thing you pay upon is, this is poor, and this is poor. Because if you don't deal with the threats that you are not responding to well, your business is in trouble. So the higher ratings, you say, yes, keep it up. But for areas of emphasis, you have to pay attention to where you are poor because you need to fix that. And it says here what? Global warming and other weather-related issues. And then it says US spreading rapidly, the flu, spreading rapidly, causing consumers to be hesitant going to public places. What that has the potential to do? Before shutdown, has the potential to decrease sales. because customers, if they are not present, unless they buy online, so it has the potential to decrease sales, and once sales are decreased, what else is decreased? Revenues, and then eventually you can then lead to some kind of problem for the company and not being profitable. You understand, folks? And here again, excellent, 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 excellent. So what does this tell you? Is there a problem in the opportunities? Right. So superior response, above average. So you say, keep on doing what you're doing. Try to improve on which ones? So in terms of this EFE, what your advice would be, you need to pay attention to numbers 4, 6, even these one, the tools. So it means that the company seems not to be responding appropriately to the various threats. Now, how significant that is, folks, that the company has not been responding well to its threats. Oh boy, that's nice rain. That means we could have 3 hours then. Folks, you understand the point we're making? It suggests that this company has several threats, but it has not been responding well to the threats, which means it needs now to look for strategies to deal with these areas that is not, because if it does not, it could impact on the business negatively. So, well, that depends. It might be in an area where there's a lot of environmental volatility, but the resources you're accessing are so like oil. So it's like looking at the risk versus the return. So it might be a high risk. But people could argue in terms of tourism, most of the Northern Caribbean, it's really high risk when it comes to hurricanes, but we are still into tourism and the beaches are important. But you make so much money when the weather is good that if there's a bad time, at least you can then fight back because you would have made so many millions from tourists. But we are in a high-risk environment, but we are still into tourism. It's a major global issue for the Caribbean in terms of rising tides and beaches eroding. So I said it depends on how much you get, and if you remember your financial management course, the higher the risk, the higher the return. So it's about balancing risk and the possible returns. Right? So in the cases that you would have, you would need to read what is the background to the case, and that's a very good question. That would help you to form those kind of decisions, you see? Yes? Sorry?
Would we have to do our own risk-benefit ratio?
No, not, you know, you won't, he said whether you have to do a risk-benefit ratio. You won't be required to do that in this class. Yeah. So we want to go on to the CPM. And remember we said before, it's the ratings that are important and the weights, the relationship to the weights. And we are saying here, this tool looks at the firm's major competitors. So in terms of preparing your cases for presentation, you need to determine who you consider or which company you consider to be the most critical competitor for a particular company. Whether it could be 3, that is your choice. Your group will have to be able to make that choice. Now, the difference between the structure of the EFE and the CPM relates to the key success factors. Okay? And in terms of the ratings, the language of the ratings also changes. So you would have A4 is a major strength, A3 a minor strength, 2 minor weakness, and 1 major weakness. So students get this mixed up sometimes. Look at it carefully, right? 4 major strength, 3 minor strength, 1 minor weakness, 2 minor weakness, and 1 major weakness. So the numbers are not sequentially ranked from 1 to 4 as would occur in the AFE. So they said you need to know these ratings very well. So let's look at the matrix. So we have Walt Disney, CBS, and News Corporation. We have the critical success factors. We have the critical success factors. We have weights, ratings, weighted scores as the EFE. So the 2 different things here would be, 1, you have critical success factors, or the 3 different things. You have critical success factors. You have 3 companies, and you have ratings that are different. You have ratings that are different. Pay attention, folks, to the critical success factors. Right. Price competitiveness, global expansion, which is an external structure, internal employee morale, internal technology from within, internal customer loyalty, external market share, external, well, it could be internal for the company, advertising, internal product quality, internal product image, internal financial position, internal. So as opposed to just looking at opportunities or threats or strengths and weaknesses, you look at the factors considered necessary for the company to maintain its competitiveness or advantage. And you will have to complete the SW and OT in the SWOT to be able to do this. Right? If you don't do your SWOT analysis, you will not be able to determine the critical success factors. So folks, I hope you realize what I said last week about the foundation stuff, that the person analysis, SWOT analysis, 5 forces analysis, all of those tools will be necessary before we can begin to construct these matrices that we are presenting. Now, the same principle applies for the CPM when it comes to the weights. And we know the weight relates to importance, correct? And then we say it's an area of emphasis in terms of recommendations for the company. But there's one small, and we already looked at the ratings, which are different. But there is one significant difference in relation to the weight, the weightings for the CPM. Can anybody tell me? It's in the notes. What is different about the weights for the CPM? Somebody tell me. Who prepared ahead? The lady right in the back, in the black and gray. Next to you. Lady in front. The brown bag and jacket. What's your name? Sorry? Shanae? Yes, Shanae. Next to Shanae. Green. Coming from the back. Guy in the red. Gray with hot. Yes? Anybody? What's different about the weights for the CPM? What's different between the construction of the EFE and the CPM? What is different? Other than the rating, what's the significant difference? Sorry? Comparing what? Right. You're looking at competitive relationships, but you are comparing companies. Whereas the EFE deals with one company, the CPM deals with multiple companies. So hence, what's the difference with the weights in the CPM? How would the weights in the CPM have to be different? Sorry? shows. No, we're just talking about the weights. We're talking about the weights. What's the significant difference in the weights? This is one company. Three companies. Yes. Wow. They were high. Brilliant. Why does it have to be an industry rate? And it's mathematical. Why does it have to be an industry rate? Folks, you compare harps with harps. So in order to really make a true set of weighted scores that are read, you have to have a common. In other words, you can't have a weight that is for Disney, and then another weight for CBS, another weight, because the results will be different. But when you have a common weight, when you multiply by the ratings, you then have standardized the weighted score. Brilliant. What's your name again? Christina, that's excellent. Brilliant. Wow. So you determine you get an A+ for this course, right? It's an industry score. So when you're developing it, you need to determine then, you make that judgment, right? You know, I don't pigeonholing you. You make a judgment and just justify when you're doing the weights. And again, the case would help you to determine which of these things are most important in terms of the industry. And we are seeing here 2, technology, customer loyalty, right? You make a judgment based on the context of the business. So if you look here, logically, why do you think customer loyalty would be one of the most important success factors in these companies? They're all But what about the businesses? Will help you to come to that conclusion. Right? Service oriented. Service oriented. Entertainment. Fun. Very heavy in personalized services. Very heavy in personalized services. People's taste for movies, as they said, or entertainment. We prefer to say maybe entertainment. So folks, the biggest challenge you will have seeing this for the first time is moving from an EFE into CPM and not being conscious or understanding the importance of the weight and how the weight could impact on the eventual ratings. But everything else applies other than the interpretation of the ratings. So we know that if Disney got a 4, it was a major response, a major strength, and it got almost all major strengths, above average strength, hence a nearly perfect 4 rating. And then you can see here why this company seems to be having a low, just an average total weighted score. 1 for structure, 1 for product quality, and then other tools, a lot of weaknesses. This company has a lot of weaknesses and 2 strengths. So as I said today, we're just basically looking at the structure. Anybody wants me to go over any other thing about the CPM in terms of its structure and how it works? And after you analyze the most important weights, 1, 2, maybe 3, 4, you can do the 10s or the 2 12s and the 3 10s. And you can determine Disney leads, followed by CBS, and then News Corporation coming in 3rd. The other important bit, Disney at 4, 2, CBS, weak. News Corporation, strong. Or stronger, sorry, above average. So let me ask you a question then. Suppose Disney is considering merging. Right? Disney is considering merging. It's going to look at the two competitors. It wants to merge or take over one of these companies. What things would you look at to help Disney in coming up who to take over or who to merge with? So we see here, they're switching around. For technology, CBS, major, minor strength. Minor weakness for customer loyalty. For News Corp, it is a minor weakness for technology and a minor strength for customer loyalty. Which one would you choose?
But then they will have to go down to like advertisement and product image and look at those ones to then determine the difference.
But I'm saying for you, if you had to look at those two, just these two,
Customer loyalty.
why?
Because that's the most important in that, well, to me, it will be the most important in the service industry, and they could always upgrade technology.
Your supporter, she's saying she would go with service, the customer loyalty. Because with the nature of the business, your support on that, I was support on that too. Anybody could buy technology with money, but the customer loyalty, looking at brand recognition, and it's hard to build, very, very hard to build. Very correct. Good choice. Right? So both, that's what you will have to develop the skills to do. You don't find that kind of a skill of analysis in the textbook. There's no textbook that tells you how to do what we are doing here. And so for most of the course, and this is important, most of this course would involve you developing the competencies and skills to do analysis that you will not find in textbooks. So when I'm interacting with you and calling your name and getting feedback, it's skill building. I'm helping you to develop the skills to be analytical. So I'm urging those students who tend to be silent. No, they're not necessarily rewarded in being silent. Sometimes you might know it in your head, but sometimes it's best for you to verbalize that I can confirm for you you're on the right track. Because you might think you know it in your head and have misunderstood something, but I want to stress the best way for you to test your understanding and knowledge is to participate. And as I tell you folks, I've been doing this thing for a lot of years in teaching. I am one of them lecturers that is put up PowerPoint notes and read to you from point to point to point. All the notes online now for the rest of the semester. You understand, Quinn? So for you to learn well in this course, when I call you out to respond, keeping silent is not to your advantage. I mean, I wouldn't force you to talk, but for the ones that are silent, I will come back to you every week because, as I say, this is one big tutorial that we're going to be doing for the rest of the semester. And I've designed it to be one big tutorial, and then you have the small tutorials because I set the exam and I know the skills required to get this course done well. The other thing I didn't mention to you folks that I will tell you, don't get restless yet, still got some time. If you don't believe me, ask any student you know that did this course that passed it, and I give you the assurance. This is one course that when it gets to be 12 and 13, you don't have to do much revision to do well. In fact, the students who will get the A pluses and A's and A minuses and B pluses hardly study for this course in the exam. Because by weeks 10 and 11, you have all the knowledge and capabilities to do well. And all you have to do is to keep a steady revision talking to your colleagues. So let me repeat, folks. The history is that by weeks 10 and 11 and 12 latest, those students who will do extremely well by that time have all the knowledge and capabilities to go in my exam and do extremely well, and they will do very little studying. You know this 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock and long hours? You don't have to do it with this course once you follow the suggestions I'm making to you. And if you don't believe me, ask anybody who would have done it before and done well, right? You don't, by that time, that's how I have it structured. But what it does, folks, every week, I push you to keep on top of things, right? So today, excellent, I'm really impressed. But I need more people reading ahead, and I need more people participating and being interactive. That's how I can know whether I'm really helping you to understand. And it's the students I know who might be having little challenges are the ones I want to be able to talk out. So again, folks, there's nothing wrong in a class by saying, and I've had many classes where a student asked me to go over it once, and they asked me to go over it a second time. Folks, I don't get annoyed, I don't fret. If there's a student in this class who wants me to go over something 4 times, folks, I will take 15 minutes to go over it. If you want to take a break and go to the washroom, you can. But it means this is a student who wants to learn and do well. So I wouldn't get frustrated, folks. And it doesn't tell me that you are not smart. It is smart that you tell me to go over it over and over. You understand? And when I see you saying, I got it now, or they can look in your eyes and see you have it, folks. But please, don't feel shame that if you put it in your hand and ask me to go over it 3 and 4 times, that it means that you're not smart. Right? Please. And I know I can look in certain people's eyes and realize there's some people who really ain't get it yet. But for whatever reason, they don't want to speak out. But I'm urging you, that's the way I teach my courses, folks. You might have realized that by now. I'm not a lecture person. And the more you get the foundation done, I'm going to bring samples. This is what I do. I will bring a sample of an EFE. And for the first 20 minutes, Amy, I will handle all the copies. And I say, get together in a partner or two, analyze this EFE. And then we actually, on the spot, analyze it and make recommendations. And we spend 15 to 20 minutes, practicing this particular approach, which actually is likely to come in the exam. Right? Yes, sir. As I said, anything that comes, you want to get the matrix, right? In fact, that's a good question, folks. The quizzes are not intended to be matrices and things like models to analyze. That is for the exam. What the quizzes are structured, simple knowledge and recall. The quizzes are very simple. Most students get 9 out of 10, and 8 out of 10 for the, in fact, a lot of students get full marks. Right? I can bring you the coursework and show you the coursework. And I'm serious, I'll bring you a sample. The average student in this course will get 36 out of 40. Some people get 38 out of 40, 35 out of 40, 34 out of 40, 32 out of 40. Right? Some students get nearly full marks. So the quiz is not a difficult quiz. What I do is try to quiz you for you to read and develop an understanding and knowledge. So the quiz tests your knowledge of the subject area. So it's anything that comes the week before, but not the matrix. So it would say, what are the weights? Right? What do the weights in the CPM refer to? Or what do the weights in the EFE refer to? I want you to be able to say industry weight, individual weights. Or I might say to you, what is a 4 for the CPM versus a 4 for the EFE? Right? So it's just testing your knowledge. And what I do too, folks, the quizzes are intended to force you to read. So that you don't wait for the last minute to read. So to prepare for the quiz, you have to revise. And in the quiz, you have to have some basic understanding of it. So that's my little trick to make sure you don't wait to the end and cram. Because, folks, honestly, I really want you to do well. And they say, for me, I don't know about any of my colleagues, when students do well and very well, I feel good and I feel I've earned my money. And I'm not telling you that to make you feel good, right? But I feel good when students do extremely well. When a student comes after me at the end of the semester, after exams, and says, Dr. Corbin, I get a B plus or I get an A, I get an A plus, and they're beaming and they're shocked. I love that. I feel good. And I earn my salary. You understand, folks? So if I push you, the other thing I can tell you, folks, I push you, and I can be demanding, right? I repeat, I will push you and I will be demanding. And if I realize you're silent very often, I will come to you and I will come to you again. Some people get offended and don't come back, but I think it's their loss and not my loss. If I'm trying to help you, if I'm trying to help you and you run from me, I can't avoid that. But in tutorials, folks, again, you cannot hide in tutorials. If you think this is interactive, and I teach most of the tutorials, right? But I generally want you to do well, and I don't want you to just pass this exam. I want you to pass this exam that if you're on Broad Street and a CEO come to you and said, I heard you did this course in management at university strategy, and you can converse about issues of strategy and competitiveness and tools and speak like a professional. So knowledge gaining and understanding in a real life sense, folks, is the way in which I teach this course, right? So folks, have a beautiful day. And again, I want to tell you folks, I am impressed with this group. Very, very impressed with the group. Have a good day. Yes.
Okay.
And tutorials begin next week.
Sorry, this week, sir. Carmen wants to ask you something about
Right,
the,
hold, let me save this.
I want to ask you something about this question. Well, you ask everybody could hear. They say anything, sir, talk
Until
about
everybody must get it.